Right around 4:17 in the early hours, a group of 3 rapid Venezuelan guard boats burst forth from the murky Caribbean skyline and raced straight ahead of the American aircraft carrier Armada at nearly 28 knots. Their setup sliced right through the path of the US ships, creating what seemed like a threatening liquid wall, meant to make the fleet halt, pivot, or withdraw. However, Venezuela had no idea that the Americans had simulated this very situation just 3 months before during a secret drill. So what sparked their action, and why zero in on this specific carrier at that exact dawn? Shortly after, aboard the USS George Washington, an alert for potential impact rang out. A faint tremor shook the structure. The monitoring displays flared to life, and the gap narrowed to less than 12 nautical miles. An obvious indicator that the blockade was intentional, not a mishap. Venezuela was basically claiming a portion of open seas as their protected area, challenging the US forces to respond. Still, rather than swerving aside, the US carrier assembly stayed on track. The signal was crystal clear. Rights to sail freely would remain intact. What played out in the following brief period would challenge strategies, determination, and ocean messaging at the top tier. Yet, by deciding to challenge the US forces, Venezuela had committed a major error in judgment. Only 48 hours prior, the Venezuelan sea leadership had released an unusual private order, alerting that outside naval units were edging too near to what they asserted was a broadened defense perimeter. At 4:19, the trio of Venezuelan guard boats moved ahead in a compact, arrow-like arrangement, their trails carving neat paths over the Caribbean waves, while they exceeded 28 knots. Rather than trailing from afar, they positioned themselves squarely into the anticipated trail of the US carrier assembly, advancing with the accuracy of a team that had practiced the action repeatedly. Every adjustment of their front edged them nearer to the lane the USS George Washington would typically traverse, integrating into the US route in a manner that appeared as an examination, a cue, and an ambush simultaneously. As the separation diminished, the US carrier's control center spotted the unusual advance. Monitoring specialists announced the contracting shape on their panels, and in mere instants, the impact alert resounded through the metal corridors. Crew members rushed to their posts, securing equipment, verifying links, and gearing up for anything the coming moments could deliver. A young lieutenant subsequently confessed, "My palms were sweaty. That impact alert noise at sea sticks with you." The reality is, you prepare for it, but when it's genuine, when their outlines appear on the edge, it all transforms. Though carrier assemblies are built to manage stress, a blockade within 12 nautical miles is always taken seriously. For huge crafts, this span is the mental and operational limit where response duration falls sharply. A craft as massive as a carrier can't pivot abruptly or speed off. Any unfriendly craft piercing this span can compel a clash just via location. And that's the reason the control center handled the swiftly nearing group with such seriousness. Even with the pre-dawn timing, pressure mounted rapidly. The Venezuelan crafts kept ideal positioning, their fronts aimed not at empty ocean, but at the expected path of the carrier. It grew evident they weren't wandering, watching, or scouting. Now picture yourself as the US leader, positioned on that control center in the faint early light, observing 3 swift scout ships secure into arrangement and reduce the gap without pause. With alerts blaring, monitoring panels focused, and all attention on you, would you maintain the path, or would you swivel? Share your thoughts below. At the instant the Venezuelan setup secured its advanced tilt, the US forces replied with an action that was as composed as it was strategic. For the initial occasion in ages, the carrier's control center needed to ponder a situation nobody foresaw. What if a Venezuelan craft harbored an unlisted ship-targeting rocket? Models from Chinese sails had been appearing in the area. A single wrongly interpreted action, a bold monitoring fix, could ignite a sequence nobody could halt. The USS Gravely, located on the carrier's right flank, urged its engines stronger and started gliding into a fresh path. The warship slanted its front toward the blockade boundary, moving rightward in a purposeful curve that set it squarely amid the quick scout crafts and the USS George Washington. Out in vast waters, velocity is merely one element of the struggle. What really counts is placement, since the craft that seizes the key tilt initially directs how the whole clash develops. That's why the Gravely's action seemed cool, keen, and disturbingly accurate. It didn't veer or jolt. Rather, it traversed the ocean with the assurance of a ship that comprehended each yard of the conflict zone. Up on the surface, the following indicator ascended into the breeze as an MH-60R Seahawk activated its blades. The sharp noise increased, resounding over the carrier assembly as the chopper rose from its base and circled into position over the warship. Blades whirred above. Its aerial route created a shielding loop visible from distant points, illustrating a standard US forces method employed in strained meetings. Sea-Air Operations leadership has regularly mentioned in its open statements that Seahawk teams offer initial site-based discouragement in near advances, supplying both oversight and supervision without rising to aggression. This explains why the craft lingered at a managed span, generating a noticeable alert that the assembly was completely conscious of each tilt the Venezuelan crafts tried to use. Beneath, the Gravely's control team observed the blockade boundary with firmness. The warship now functioned as a gentle obstacle, an instrument the forces frequently apply to uncover a nearing craft's actual purpose. By taking the disputed trail at a keener tilt, the Gravely compelled the Venezuelan crafts to select, either modify their direction, show a heightening, or hazard a perilous crossing event. For a short time, watchers might have anticipated the Venezuelan setup to reduce velocity, expand its gaps, or change direction. However, nothing like that took place. Rather, the three scout ships sustained their pace, keeping a tenacious, nearly rebellious drive as they lessened the separation. Their trails extended in extended marks after them, displaying no doubt and no indication of pullback. What nobody grasped was the following 20 seconds would resolve all. This denial to give way introduced a fresh level of strain to the setting, since it signified the Gravely's existence wasn't sufficient to alter their scheme. From above, the Seahawks looped and recorded each tilt alteration, sending sharp images back to the warship. From the waters, the Gravely persisted progressing, firm as a knife. As the setup condensed, one fact grew unavoidable. Venezuela wasn't merely examining the carrier assembly's monitoring or order. The denial to fall under rapid advance implied a more profound scheme, an effort to compel the US forces into rerouting its path. Still, the US reply stayed steadfast. By sustaining its spot and directing the blockade boundary, the Gravely was softly issuing a declaration that needed no announcement, no alert, and no elevated armament. The ocean might be broad, but the initial craft to claim the vital tilt determines who yields and who stands strong. And in this clash, Venezuela had advanced with surety, but the US forces had already started forming the result without launching a lone round. The subsequent stage of the clash developed gradually, initially nearly soundlessly. Still, each motion bore significance. As the Venezuelan scout crafts kept reducing the divide, the USS Gravely altered its stance in a manner each crew member on the surface comprehended right away. The warship's 5-inch Mark 45 cannon, usually directed ahead in a balanced spot, started to pivot. It didn't rotate quickly, nor did it fix on any mark. Rather, it shifted toward the path of the three nearing crafts, halting at a tilt that rendered one aspect undeniable. The United States had transitioned to a condition of preparedness. Sea photographers have captured comparable instances in prior near meetings, like those detailed by Sea Updates in 2023, where a warship modified its primary cannon tilt during a strained deadlock in the South China waters to indicate readiness without rising to a shooting stance. The motion is understated, but each country with sea forces identifies it immediately. Around the Gravely, additional armament setups changed in their own silent manners. The three crafts were still operating intensely. Their motors remained over 20 knots, far past the pace used for watching or following. Rather than reducing to indicate care or calming, the Venezuelan craft sustained push, generating extended pale trails that sliced boldly over the ocean. The waters burst in pale foam. The Seahawks, looping high, dispatched instant images, verifying what the internal detectors already showed. The scout vessels weren't retreating. If anything, they were readying to near even more. On one group, the US Assembly displayed steadiness, constant direction, constant pitch, constant order. On the other, Venezuela displayed drive, motion without doubt, pace without break. For almost a minute, the two setups existed within a delicate balance. The broadcast stayed vacant. The motors thundered under the structures, and each crew member on the surface grasped how simply the next instant could lean toward emergency.